About the end of February 1821, Napoleon was obliged to take to his bed and did not rise again. "How low am I fallen," he murmured. "I stirred the world, and I cannot raise my eyelid." He did not believe in medicine, and objected to a consultation of antimarchy with the Jamestown doctors. Nevertheless, he admitted Dr. Arnott beside his deathbed. He dictated his will from the 15th to the 27th of April. On the 28th, he ordered his heart to be sent to Marie-Louise. He forbade any British surgeon to lay a hand upon him after his decease. Persuaded that he was succumbing to the malady by which his father had been attacked, he requested that the report of the autopsy be transmitted to his son. His will begins with this clause: "I die in the Apostolic and Roman religion, in the bosom of which I was born more than 50 years ago." On the 3rd of May, Napoleon was administered the sacrament of extreme unction and received the Blessed Viaticum. The silence of the bedchamber was interrupted only by the Singultus death sob, mingled with the regular sound of the pendulum of a clock. The shadow, before stopping on the dial, did a few more rounds. The day star that outlined it had difficulty in setting. On the 4th, the tempest of Cromwell's death pangs arose. Almost all the trees at Longwood were uprooted. At last, on the 5th, at 11 minutes to 6 in the evening, amid the wind, the rain, and the crash of the waves, Napoleon gave up to God the mightiest breath of life that ever quickened human clay. The last words caught upon the conqueror's lips were "tête armée" or "tête d'armée." His thoughts were still wandering in the midst of combats. When he closed his eyes forever, his sword, dead with him, was laid by his side. A crucifix rested on his breast. The symbol of peace, applied to the heart of Napoleon, calmed the throbbing of that heart, even as a ray from heaven makes the wave to fall. Napoleon, booted, spurred, dressed in the uniform of a colonel of the guard, decorated with the Legion of Honor, was laid in state on his little iron bedstead. Upon that visage which was never astonished, the soul, as it fled, had left a sublime stupor. the cloak which the erstwhile victor had worn at the vast funeral of Marengo served as a pall for the coffin. The planers and joiners soldered and nailed Napoleon into a fourfold coffin, of mahogany, of lead, of mahogany again, and of tin. They seemed to fear that he would never be imprisoned enough. Napoleon first desired to be interred in the Cathedral of Ajaccio. Then, by a codicil dated the 16th of April 1821, he bequeathed his bones to France. Heaven had served him better. His real mausoleum is the rock on which he expired. Napoleon, foreseeing the opposition of the British government to his last wishes, eventually made a choice of a burying place in St Helena. In a narrow valley known as Sens or Geranium Valley, now Tomb Valley, rises a fountain. Napoleon's Chinese servants used to fill their pitchers there. 2 weeping willows overhang the spring. Green grass grows all around. Napoleon delighted in the willows of the spring. He asked for the peace of the Seine Valley, even as banished Dante asked for the peace of the convent of Corvo. In gratitude for the transient repose which he tasted there during the last days of his life, he appointed that valley as the shelter of his eternal rest. Speaking of the source, he said, "If God were willing that I should recover, I would raise a monument in the spot where it springs." That monument was his tomb. The obsequies were held on the 9th of May. The weather was fine. 4 horses, led by grooms on foot, drew the hearse. 24 British grenadiers, carrying no arms, surrounded it. Napoleon's horse followed. The garrison of the island lined the precipices of the road. 3 squadrons of dragoons went before the procession. The 20th Regiment of Infantry, the Marines, the Saint Helena Volunteers, the Royal Artillery with 15 pieces of cannon brought up the rear. Bands of musicians, stationed at distances on the rocks, exchanged mournful tunes. On reaching a pass, the hearse stopped. The 24 unarmed grenadiers lifted up the corpse and had the honour of carrying it on their shoulders to the burying place. 3 volleys of artillery saluted the mortal remains of Napoleon at the moment when he sank into the earth. All the noise which he had made on that earth did not penetrate 6 feet beneath it. A stone which was to have been employed in the building of a new house for the exile was lowered upon his coffin, as it were the trapdoor of his last cell. They recited the verses from Psalm 87. "I am poor and in labours from my youth, and being exalted have been humbled and troubled. Thy wrath has come upon me." The flagship fired minute guns. This warlike harmony, lost in the immensity of the ocean, made response to the Requiescat in pace. The Emperor, buried by his victors of Waterloo, had heard the last cannon shot of that battle. He did not hear the last detonation with which Britain disturbed and honoured his sleep at St Helena. All withdrew, holding in their hands a branch of willow, as though returning from the festival of Palm Sunday. Napoleon's destiny was a muse, like all high destinies. That muse was able to change an abortive outcome into a tragedy that revived its hero. The solitude of Napoleon's exile and tomb had spread over a brilliant memory prestige of a different kind. Alexander did not die under the eyes of Greece. He disappeared far away in proud Babylon. Napoleon did not die under the eyes of France. He vanished in the gorgeous horizons of the torrid zone. He sleeps like a hermit or like a pariah in a valley at the end of a deserted pathway. The magnitude of the silence which presses upon him equals the vastness of the noise that once surrounded him. The nations are absent. Their crowd has withdrawn. The tropical bird, harnessed, as Buffon says, to the chariot of the sun, precipitates itself from the orb of light. Where does it alight today? It alights upon the mortal remains whose weight tilted the globe. Napoleon was an immense genius in war, an indefatigable, able and intelligent spirit in administration, a hard-working and rational legislator. That is why he has so great a hold on the imagination of peoples, and so much authority over the judgment of practical men. The world belongs to Napoleon. Living, he missed the world. Dead, he possesses it. Antiquity makes the son of Priam say to the shade, "Judge not Hector by his little tomb. The Iliad, Homer, the Greeks in flight, see there my sepulchre. I am buried under all those great deeds." Napoleon is no longer the real Napoleon, but a legendary figure fashioned from the poet's whims, soldiers' tales and popular legend. It is a Charlemagne or Alexander of medieval epic we behold today. This hero of fantasy will remain the real individual. The other portraits will vanish. It is enough that at St Helena one finds solitude, the ocean, and Napoleon.